Hi, my name is Dan Bash. I'm the host and producer of GoodEnoughChats, the podcast on a mission to destigmatise men's mental health, one chat at a time. Before we jump into this episode with David Eakins, I just want to give you a quick heads up about what we're going to be covering. This is an intense conversation at times. David has experienced severe trauma. The sudden loss of his dad, the incredibly traumatic circumstances shortly afterwards that surrounded the birth of his first child, and the additional layer of challenge that came from working in a high pressure industry in the advertising space, and the way in which he was treated, managed after those incredibly traumatic experiences, and where that took him to the brink. It is a difficult conversation to hear, but it is a really, really important conversation for people who need to hear this stuff to be able to listen and realise that they are not on their own. It's also full of optimism and hope, because David has absolutely turned an incredibly difficult situation around and is now doing incredibly positive things to help wider society, and is trying to drive through change in the advertising industry and its attitude towards mental health as a result. So it's a difficult listen, but it's an important one to hear. And without further ado, let's jump into it. Hi, David. How are you doing?
Very well, Dan. How are you?
Yeah, I'm good, thank you. I'm currently we're in the middle of a mini heat wave in the UK, as you'll be very well aware. I'm saying that in the hope that we've got an international audience version in the background.
But you never know.
It is for the benefit of anybody that's listening to this that hasn't watched an episode before. My office is essentially a sauna, which means that when the sun comes out and I'm recording these things, it can sometimes get a little bit warm. So if you see me starting to wilt at all during the conversation, it's no reflection on you, David. It's simply that I'm about to pass out because of heat. How are you doing?
Really good, really good. I've got a bit of a cough, so just getting over this cold. So I might have to mute myself and just have a cough. It's driving me mad, my wife mad, but you just got to roll with it. But it's at the tail end now, so that's all good. Yeah,
awesome. David, for the benefit of our audience, please could you introduce yourself, your name, where you come from, where you live, what you do, shoe size, most embarrassing record ever purchased.
Yes, well, most embarrassing record ever purchased. My first ever album was Boney M on a double cassette tape bought from Woolworths. So my name is David Eakins. I'm 45 years old. I live in Hove, Brighton and Hove, down on the south coast of England. And I had a 20-year career in advertising, which I loved. It was a love-hate relationship. I loved it, but the impact on me, my mental health, my well-being, was quite significant. And I'm sure we'll get onto that later on sort of how much of an impact that had on me. But I'm good. I had a bit of a wobble 7 years ago, to say the least.
Yeah.
I had 5 years after that. It was a moment of crisis. 5 years after that, I was too ashamed and embarrassed to talk about, how low I was and what I'd almost done to myself and inflicted on my family. And I was just utterly ashamed for 5 years, and I just kept it a secret. I couldn't admit it to myself or other people. And it just kept me in a real deep, dark place. I was depressed and self-medicating with lots of drink and drugs to try and portray the happy version of me. And it got me nowhere. It got me worse. And then after 5 years of that, I I think the universe or my soul or something within me just said, you got to do something different. And I started talking to people about how I felt, going back to advertising agencies to tell people my story. And the weight off my shoulders was instantaneous, I felt, which was a great feeling. But really, it's the reaction of people that really gave me that uplift, which was, oh my God, that story you just told us is absolutely insane. Here's what I'm going through.
Mm.
And knowing that it wasn't just me that was struggling, it was so many other people. Um, it sounds it sounds horrible, but to know that I'm not alone in suffering really did help. I don't want anyone else to suffer, right? But knowing it wasn't just me was a really great help, and it just put me on a brand new path of honesty, well-being, and learning how to be a human being. And part of that is helping other people,
Yeah.
which is why I'm here today.
Yeah.
Tell
Yeah.
my story.
And I was your kind of work was flagged to me by one of our show's previous guests, James Pickles. He kind of said, David's got a story to tell. You should speak.
James Pickles.
Exactly. We'll give him a tag in the post of this
Yeah.
as well, because he's been a massive advocate and supporter of the show since before it even got started. And there are, you and I, full disclosure for everybody, David and I had a call probably about 3-4 weeks ago where we met for the first time. That's the only conversation that we've had prior to this, but that conversation went on, I think, for about an hour and a half. In the
Could have
end,
gone on longer.
yeah, it was only meant to be a half-hour kind of intro
Yeah.
kind of thing, wasn't it? But David's got a whole wealth of incredibly powerful and useful stuff to share today. So I know this is going to be a good one. And the reason that you're here, David, that is exactly what this show is all about. That's why this show exists. It's through my own personal experience, having that moment of realization that you've been feeling like it's just you, you're isolated, you're the only person that's going through that. As soon as you start talking about this stuff, it's not that people come out of the woodwork, because that sounds quite sinister, but you start to hear other people acknowledging that they've been through a crap time, or that people that they know and love have been through something. And it does feel like the weight starts to be lifted from your shoulders, because you know other people have been through something like this, and it's not just you that needs to try and work it all out on your own.
Yeah, we're in it together.
Exactly.
Yeah, it's I think that I'm still learning all about our mental health and our well-being, but our well-being is our individual responsibility. But my well-being is entirely reliant on you, my wife, my best friend, my employer, my kid, and everyone is reliant on that to feel like I belong, I feel connected, I feel seen, heard, understood. And without that, it does impact your well-being. And if you don't have that, you can feel lonely. Loneliness leads to depression. So yes, yeah, it's we're tribal creatures. So having these connections are really important.
Couldn't agree more. Couldn't agree more. We're going to talk in a lot of detail about the experiences that you've been through in the past, David. But for kind of bringing it into the kind of present moment, how has your last week been?
Really good. Apart from this cold and cough, it's driving me mental. And I've got a frozen shoulder. I've reached that age now where it's starting falling apart. Really good. I've had a really good week. I've I've been involved with Talk Club, which is men's mental health charity, for 6 years. They got me a really big, well, helped me out of a really big pickle 6 years ago when I was in my lowest, as a real lifeline. And now I'm in a good place, a happier place, stronger, mentally fitter place. The founder, Ben Akers, shout out Ben Akers. He's invited me to set up my own club, talk club in Brighton and Hove.
Mm.
And that launched 2 weeks ago, and had my second session on Monday this week. And there was three of us, and it was great. And I'm still riding the high, the wave of that good feeling. There was some really good chats came out of that. Um, Wednesday today, I've been really looking forward to this session as well. Um, and I'm planning. Well, I am cycling to Paris at the end of the month with my best mate, who's going through stuff. So it's going to be a nice opportunity to talk over, spend quality time, and really discuss things over 4 days, just me and him going through the beautiful countryside. So I'm doing a lot of training, trying to get the miles under the saddle for that,
Yeah,
which is a great thing,
yeah.
especially in this weather.
Well, exactly. Yeah, being out there, breathing it all in, getting the sunshine. Hopefully, not too much sunshine. But yeah, I can imagine that'll be rewarding. What's your plan with like sleeping overnight? Are you taking tents, or have you got hotels booked that you're going to drop?
We're going light, light as possible. And we've worked out the route, and there's like campsites or little villages. We're going all the back routes, sort of like dirt paths and stuff. Like I want to go through the beautiful countryside, stop off at a vineyard one or two, and I just want to eat like baguettes, the cheese, and the vinderpays, and yeah, we're going to stop off at like some campsites and Airbnbs.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Awesome. Fantastic. Well, I wish you every success with that. I have I sort of run for my kind of physical well-being. I'm not fast. I don't run particularly far. I just run because I like it. The one time that I've cycled any distance was for a charity bike ride, and I couldn't walk properly for 4 or 5 days afterwards. So I'm
Yeah.
thinking ahead to how your body is going to feel after that, and I really hope that there's sufficient amounts of baguettes, cheese, and beurre de pay to take
Yeah.
off that.
You've got to do the the stretches, warm up and warm downs. They're key.
Yeah, yeah. I didn't. I just I cycled 70 odd miles, and I did it on a mountain bike, on mountain bike tires, not road tires, on roads, whilst everybody else around me had a road bike with road tires. So
Oh, oh no, it's like uphill battle.
yeah, I didn't feel the need to go back and try that one again.
No.
Awesome. So right now you're in a good place. You're working to help other people who have been through difficult times. You're supporting your mate. You're going and exercising. You're getting out there. Let's look back at this kind of 7 year period that you talked about. This 5 year period rather, within the 7 years, and how your relationship with your mental health kind of evolved during that period. Could you talk us through? And obviously, I don't want you to talk in any more detail than you're comfortable talking about, right?
Yeah, it's all good. Yeah, yeah. I want to talk. I want to talk about all of it because I didn't talk about it for 5 years, and that's what I want to talk about now. Because lots of good comes out of it. Yeah, well, I mean, but from the crisis point onwards, 7 years ago.
You start wherever you want to. I mean, if you've kind of realized that there were things that preceded that moment that contributed to it, then it's your choice.
Yeah. So my whole life, I thought I was mentally fit. Came from a loving family, had a great bunch of mates, no history of mental health issues. Um, I was brought up in a council house in Crawley. Didn't have that much money, but that was normal. And yeah, went to school, got some good grades. Had a good future ahead of me. So life was good. Have a bit of bullying at an all boys school. So and that did cause some problems for 5 years. Um, and consequently, because of that, then I ended up doing boxing, kickboxing, and learning how to handle myself. And did 16 years mixed martial arts. So I was physically fit. I'm 6'3". I know how to handle myself. I'm confident in that sort of way, and I just didn't need to think. I didn't think I needed to think about my mental health. I'm mentally strong. And if I'm being really honest, I was like, oh, people that are weak or fragile or have had a really bad upbringing probably needs they probably need help. I didn't know too much about mental health. I thought there was like shrinks, psychologists, psychotherapists there, and that was over there. I'm living my life. I'm all good. And then life happened when I was 38, where as advertising is really rewarding industry, but it's incredibly stressful. You're working 12-hour days most days. When you're pitching, you can be working throughout the night. I did a 52-hour shift, which was insane. Doing 80-hour weeks. You know, go flying around the world on a shoot is great, but you don't get much sleep for 2 weeks. And they expect a lot from you, and you're always on. And that over time does wear you down. Um, and I could feel myself, the stress levels increasing, and my ability to enjoy life and relax and not snap. That got shorter and shorter and shorter. Um, and I think that's where a lot of people working within the industry burn out by the time they're 40, burn out or breakdown. It's like a real, happens a lot in our industry. And I did feel as if I was heading that way. And then, yeah, like cycling across London to work one morning. I was 38 years old, got a call from my brother, and I thought, that's really unusual. My brother never phones me. I know something bad is happened or happening. Stopped at some lights, picked up, and he was panicking, voice saying, "Dad's collapsed. The dad is collapsed. Ambulance is on the way now. Here, on the way. Doesn't look good. Get to the Isle of Wight now." And I'm like, okay. Um, I just felt my whole world just crumbling down. My dad was only 64, and it took hours to get from London to the Isle of Wight. By the time I did, he was on life support. It was a catastrophic brain hemorrhage. Whole right hand side of his brain hemisphere had been flooded with blood, and there's just no way back from that. And they kept him on the machine so his two brothers could come and say their goodbyes. And as soon as they were gone, they turned the machine off, and I held his hand as he passed. That was 24 hours after I got that phone call. And I've never experienced pain like that. It was just the most raw, unfiltered, just the most concentrated amount of pain I'd ever felt in my entire life. And I wasn't prepared for that. I didn't know how to handle these emotions, but you know, it's just life. I did know that everyone's got to lose their parents at some point, so it will happen. But I just wasn't prepared for it to be that soon. Um, and it was particularly painful as well because I was about to become a father for myself for the first time. My dad was looking forward to being a grandfather, and that was never going to happen. And so, yeah, even at his funeral, my wife was like heavily pregnant, and yeah, ended up going back to work. And um, when it was due for my wife to give birth, ended up going to the hospital when it was a planned cesarean, and I was still grieving heavily, but excited because we're going to be bringing in this new life into the world, and I could just really focus my attention on that. And yeah, just tragedy struck again in the the theatre. They gave her a spinal block, and I was holding her hand, same hands that I held my dad's. And as they gave her the spinal block, she went into cardiac arrest. Her heart just froze up like a rock. The nurse pressed a big red button and said, "You need to get out of the room now." I was in a bit of shock. I just didn't know what was going on. And as I walked out, a resus team was already sprinting down the corridor to barge past me. And I went into a room on my own, thinking, this is not what's supposed to happen, but it's a well-oiled machine. They obviously know what they're doing, so they must have experienced this a few times. So we're in good hands. They're on it. Half an hour later, a nurse came in and said, "Congratulations, you're now a father. It's a boy." I said, "That's great news. What about my wife?" And they said, "We still can't get her back." My jaw just hit the floor, thinking, "Oh, you're still working on her? I thought you'd got her back and the baby, and it was all good." I went, "No, no, we're going to do another half an hour, and if we can't get her back, that's it." And I couldn't comprehend the words that are coming out of that nurse's mouth. Um, and so I went, "Okay, this shit is real." Right, okay. They went off and phoned my wife's dad, told him what was going on. He better get to the hospital with the family. And I watched that clock, and it got to 52 minutes, and I went, "That's it, lost." Got 8 minutes to go, and I think, I'm going to lose her. Yeah, 52 minutes. Sorry, 54 minutes in. The same nurse came back and went, "Right, we got a glimmer of a heartbeat. It's not enough to sustain her life. We are going to try and get an ECMO machine, which is life support, down from London. But trouble is, they've only got two spare, and it's raining, and they need to anticipate multiple motorbike accidents. Plus, they think she's a lost cause because both her lungs had collapsed, and without her lungs, her heart beating, and with collapsed lungs, there's no way of getting oxygenated blood to her brain. So they said she's a lost cause. She'll be a vegetable. There's nothing left of her to bring back, essentially. I said, "You are going to bring that machine down." The anaesthetist, who felt entirely responsible for the injection and stopping her heart, went full apeshit down the phone, and said, "You are going to bring one down." 45 minutes later, two ambulances turned up and plugged her in. And he said, "There's 10% chance of surviving the night." And you got to prepare for that. She did survive the night, and do you want the whole story, or shall I just cut?
I want you. I want you to tell me what you're comfortable with telling.
Yes, yeah. So I'll try and keep it short. The doctors knew that my wife's on intensive care on the ground floor. My son was on the ninth floor in pediatric intensive care. they realised that I wasn't engaging with the baby whatsoever, and my focus was entirely on my wife. And they are so brilliant. I mean, there's so many lessons to be learned from this. They went, okay, we need you to bond with the baby. We know your attention is completely on your wife. If you, which we can understand, you do need to bond with the baby, but by doing that, you can actually help your wife. I said, okay, I'll do anything. And they said, right, here's two cloths. All right, put one on her chest, one on the baby's chest. Do the feed every 3 hours. But when you do that, swap cloths so that if she does pull through, he will have the scent of his mother and he will be able to bond a lot easier with her. She will be picking up the scent of the baby, and the maternal instincts are so powerful, so strong. There's a chance that will help her bring fight, come out of a coma. And so I went, okay, that's what I'm going to do. And I did that 3 hours, day and night for 8 days, eight nights. And I came down one morning, 2 o'clock. It was so quiet on that ward, and put the cloth on her chest, and sitting there holding her hand, just looking at her face, and I saw her bottom lip move and say, "My baby." She's plugged into all these machines. And so I went up to the nurse and said, "I've just seen her say my baby." And she said, "There's no way. You can't have done. She's plugged in and she's in a coma. You're tired, you're sleep deprived, And as she's saying that, she looked over my shoulder and went, "Oh my God, I just saw her say that. You're right." And I went, "Okay, well, there's something there. She knows she's a mum, she's fighting." And yeah, all hell broke loose. Not hell, but heaven broke loose. We thought this is a chance to bring her back, and over time, we did, and that's a whole new story in itself. But yeah, she got into a really good place and got out of ICU into high dependency unit, and she looked like she was going to make a mostly full recovery. But before they could discharge, and this is a really important point, before they could discharge her from the hospital, it was the top NHS psychiatrist had to interview me separately and my wife separately. I don't know what they said to her, what she said to her, but she said to me, "Look, what's going on? Like, becoming a dad for the first time is a head fuck. Plus, you got this horrific birthing experience on top. What else is going? Is there anything else going on in your life?" I said, "Look, I lost my dad a few weeks ago, and I'm massively grieving heavily for him, and I'm in all sorts of pain, and this has happened." And she went, "Okay." Slid her number, and this is why I'm so grateful. She slid her business card over to me and said, "David, put this in your wallet. In 6 months' time, within 6 months, something completely unrelated could happen, not related to any of this whatsoever. It might make you have a wobble. Before you do something silly, call my number." And I remember laughing at her and going, "You're the fucking crazy one. I've got my wife and kid back. I'm on cloud nine. I just give me that card and get me the hell out of here." Got my wife and kid and just burnt some rubber, got home, and I was like, yes, I got my family back. I'd been off work on extended work gave me extended leave on compassionate ground for 8 weeks. And going back to the workplace was incredibly difficult. It was I was going through so many different emotions that I felt very vulnerable. I didn't feel real. And when I went back in, I was incredibly nervous. And one of the first people I saw was the finance director, who I absolutely loved. Her name was Nikki, and she was like the matriarch to the agency. And I thanked her for the cards, thanked her for the gifts and everything that she'd sent to our house. And she said, "It's done, David. What you went through is done now. It's water under the bridge. Time to move on."
Wow.
Right.
Oh,
And I stood there, looked at her, and I didn't know what to say. I thought, it's not water under the bridge. I'm still trying to process this. I'm still trying to get my head around it. And a senior person in the organization is saying, it's done, get over it, move on. And that was the first moment where I felt threatened because I thought I'm not allowed to feel my emotions. Like you're telling me something, I just couldn't quite get a handle on it. And then I turned around and saw the rest of the agency. No one came up to me, no one welcomed me, no one gave me any acknowledgement of what I'd been through. It's just like the whole life was going on, and I was just standing there thinking, I'm a human being here going through stuff. Can someone please just come up to me and just say, welcome back. I heard you've been through some stuff. Good to have you back. Good to have you back on board. I didn't get that. So it's another sort of threat to my my emotions. Um, my boss, he pulled me into a room for a debrief. And I told him everything I've just told you. First thing he said to me was, yeah, when I was 18, I had a regular heartbeat and that gave me a little zap. I went, okay, what's that got to do with everything I've just been through? You're telling me about some minor thing when you're 18. And he said, well, I'm just saying. Anyway, let's get back to work. And I just couldn't believe the how callous he was and show no empathy, sympathy, um, no care about my well-being, how I wanted to be integrated back into a transition back into the workplace. It was like same as that finance director. It's like, oh, it's done now. Like you're back in the work. Like, and I went, where's my desk? He'd moved all of my belongings to a corner table on my own next to the toilets. And he went, oh, you've been away for so long. I pulled someone in here and he's working on all your projects, sitting next to me, put you over there. And I said, okay, well, what I'm going to be working on? He said, I'll just give you these little projects. I said, no, I don't want little projects. I need something to get my teeth into, like to keep my mind occupied. I need to, I don't want to sit on my own and do nothing. I've got too many thoughts going through my head. This is like, I wanted this as an escapism from what I've been through. He said, let me manage it. I'm the manager, and this is how I'm going to manage you. And over the next few days, a couple of weeks, I just got more and more depressed, sitting there isolated. Um, and so then I went up to the managing director and said, "Look, can I have just a quick chat? I feel as if I'm being mismanaged, but I'm a bag of nerves. I don't want to raise a complaint with my boss because that would like go really against me. Um, can you help me? Um, can you advise me what to do?" And she said, "Don't worry, leave it with me." I then saw her go to my creative director, whisper in her ear, in his ear, and they went out of the building together. And I didn't realize that they're in a relationship. So she told him, I'm thinking about putting a complaint to him. So then he came back and whispered in my ear, me and you going down the pub at lunchtime. And my heart just sank and I had this like knot in my stomach. And I thought, this isn't good. Sent me to the pub and he said, I just want you to fuck out my agency. And I went, what's going on here? I love this job. He's like, yeah, you're not the right fit. I went, you know what I've just been through, and now I'm losing my job. I lost my dad, experienced losing my wife and son, and now I'm losing my job. I've just gone back. She can't work. I've got a mortgage to pay. What's just happened? He said, well, look, if you don't leave, your time is going to be limited, and we'll manage. If you're not going to leave, we'll manage you out the job. I mean, you're going to manage me out the job. Okay.
You've just announced that you're going to actively, constructively dismiss me from the job.
Yeah.
I mean, that's a bold choice, isn't it?
Well, yeah. I mean, it was all off the record, down a pub, nothing on email or anything like that. He said, I'm doing you a favor so you can start looking for another job. I said, you're doing me a favor. Wow. Um, and I went back to the agency, and he told the traffic manager to not give me any work whatsoever for 6 weeks. I just sat there doing nothing, looking for work. And then the longer that went on, the deeper I fell into. I didn't even realize I was falling into depression. Um, but yeah, I remember waking up one morning, and I knew I was in a bad way because I opened up my eyes and I looked out my window and went, fuck, why did I have to wake up? Life would be so much easier if I hadn't woken up. And I went, that's a really horrible thought, Dave. That's a really dark thought. But you're right, life would be easier if you hadn't woken up. It's pain that I'm in, the pain of losing my dad, the pain of that birthing experience, the pain of that narcissistic boss treating me that way. Life just felt incredibly unfair. And I started hating life. Um, and I went into work, got trained from Brighton up to London. And as I was walking along, just thinking about how much I hate life, a bus went past and my foot took a step towards it as if like to pull me in front of the bus. And I thought, shit, that's a bit scary. Well, the worst thing about that would have been that bus wasn't going fast enough to actually kill me. It would have maimed me. I might have been a vegetable, and then I'll be a burden to my family. Um, yeah, don't jump in front of a bus that's going that speed. I need to jump in front of a bus that's go. If I was going to jump in front of a bus, it would have to be at one much faster than that. But of course, I'm not going to kill myself because what sane person would do that? But then it became a game. It became the highlight of my day. Leaving work at lunchtime or whatever break, just walking around and just trying to work out what bus would do that. Which what I learned now is the suicide ideation, that fantasy of going, I know I'm not going to kill myself, but if I was, how would I do it? Um, and I didn't tell anyone. I just thought it was just a really good, way to occupy my time away from the office to concentrate on that rather than sitting there with this evil presence of my boss. Um, and then I was going down the pub at lunchtime, just drinking a lot, just to numb the pain, to get myself through the day. And I think when you are drinking, you're not thinking clearly. Um, and yeah, I was suffering from PTSD. I didn't know at the time, but I was having lots of flashbacks, and I kept finding myself in random parts of London and not knowing how I got there. Um, it was just literally I'd just almost blink and I'd be somewhere, and I thought, where the fuck is this place? Like, I don't even know how I got. Like, this is a bit really confusing. And I remember leaving the office. It was then the last week, building up to my last week at work, and I had another one of those like blackout moments where I was just on a bridge. Um, I went, how did I get here? And the same voice that had been saying, you're weak, you're worthless, and the world would be better off without you. I saw a high-speed train approaching, and that same voice said, that's the one. I went, okay, yeah, that would definitely do it. Yeah, no one would survive that. So I just started climbing the railings of the bridge to jump in front of it. And then I thought, I'm about to make my wife a widow and my 3-month-old, 4-month-old fatherless. It's an incredibly sad thing to do. And then I heard the psychiatrist's voice saying, before you do something silly, call this number. And I went, fuck, this is that silly thing she was talking about. Oh, God, yeah, that getting fired from work happened within 6 months of this thing. What? Okay, I might have her card in my wallet. Climbed back over the railings and it was rush hour, so there was quite a few people sort of gathering around me. The look on their faces was just I've never seen a look in someone's face of sheer horror at what they'd just seen, but complete compassion as well. There was I could feel there was a lot of love, people wanting to help me, but it was a terrifying thing that they'd just seen. And I'm a quite big guy, and I think some people even thought about tackling me down to stop me, just to hold me until authorities got there or whatever. And I just told everyone to fuck off, give me space. And I just walked off, got my wallet out, found her card, and said, I was like, oh my God, I can't believe I got a card in my wallet. There's no way she's going to be picking up. It's like 5:30, 6 o'clock. It's pretty busy with the client. Phoned a number and just picked up. I was like, wow, okay. And I said, yeah, hi, my name's Dave. You probably won't remember me. My name's Dave. And she went, oh, yeah, yeah. I know exactly who you are. Where are you and what are you about to do? And I said, I'm on a bridge. And I just went to throw myself in front of a high-speed train. And she went, no, it's not a good idea doing that. It's better to get on a train than under it. Get to Brighton and I'll come see me and I'll help you out. Put the phone down. And that was it. That was my lead up to my moment of crisis. And then we can talk about all the other good stuff that happens from that. Wow. But I just thought it was really important just to say, you ask about my relationship with my mental health, that's why I'm here today, because I was a happy, healthy, normal, whatever that is, human being. And I almost ended up my life. And I never thought I'd ever get to that point. Never. So if it can happen to me, it can happen to you, your brother, your dad, your cousin, your workmate, the guy down the shop, the barman. It could happen to fucking any one of us. And I think this is why my story is so powerful, because we all go through trauma, but we don't know how to handle it.
I also want to say, for the benefit of anybody listening to this, I didn't know any of that. That's the first time I've heard that as well. So David and I spoke for an hour and a half 3 or 4 weeks ago, and all that I knew going into that conversation, I think, was because of something that you had posted on LinkedIn, that you'd been literally talked down off the bridge, or you'd stepped back from the bridge, and you were about to attempt suicide. But I didn't know any of that context. So hearing that story is incredible. and not in the sense that it's unbelievable. It's just I can't believe the all of the incredible experience that you had gone through in losing your dad's, everything that had happened around the birthing experience. I mean, that is heartbreaking and incredibly difficult to deal with. To then walk back into a workplace where everybody knew that, and to the word you used was, I'd just written it down as you were saying, actually, was callousness. The callousness of that environment and the people there.
Shocking, isn't it?
In an industry that exists to influence people's emotional responses to things.
Understanding human behavior in order to get people to emotionally attach to products or services to sell them.
It's incredible. It's amazing that would happen in any workplace. It beggars belief that would happen in a sector that is specifically geared up towards emotional intelligence, in theory, right? But obviously, you and I both have a similar background in our careers. I'm from a sort of PR comms background. You're from a creative advertising background. So they're not the same industry, but there's similarities. I can relate to the strains and the stresses and the long days and the never being able to switch off and all of those things. I'm kind of nodding along, going, yes, yeah, I feel that, I recognise that. But you went through that. You were exposed to that on top of what everybody else already knew. Is just it is a total illustration of the fact that it can happen to anybody. And what you said earlier on in the conversation about, your well-being is dependent on your boss's attitude, your friend's attitude, your partner's attitude, your relationships with your kids, all that. It's so true. Anybody that's listening to this now, if there's one thing that they take away from this, it's to understand that they have a role to play, even if it's a tiny little thing or a tiny little action. They have a role to play in helping people to feel okay in this world, that their actions have consequences, intended and unintended. And that doesn't mean that everybody needs to tread around on eggshells the whole time. And it shouldn't need to be said that for somebody that has been through what you went through, that there needs to be a lot of compassion on display as you come back into that workplace. That's not treading on eggshells. That's like doing what a decent human being would do, right, for somebody else, and to support them.
But the workplace is a funny one, because you're there to work, you're there to make the company money. And there are so many narcissistic bosses out there who are just career driven. If there's a problem, get rid of the problem. It's a lot easier. I just couldn't believe how, and this is where I had such anger and just a nuclear fusion of rage inside of me for 5 years at how life had treated me in that way, and a boss had treated me that way. And that's why I ended up just drinking and doing a lot of drugs to numb that pain or that feeling of just rage, to numb it all. And this is why I've now, 7 years later, and working incredibly hard on my mental health, I've set up a company called Happy Sapien, like a Homo sapien, but a happy one. And it's to improve workplace well-being, because that was the catalyst, that was the tipping point, that was the straw that broke my mental health. And I was incredibly lucky. The fact I was one of the lucky ones. I had a card in my wallet. You know, I had a lifeline. I had someone, guardian angel in the NHS looking after me. But what about all the thousands, hundreds of thousands, millions of people who are walking around without a card in their wallet? You know, who are going through stressful times, might have lost a loved one, might be losing a job. You know, the financial, the current economic crisis we're facing, cost of living crisis we're facing, loads of people are struggling and they haven't got that lifeline that I had.
And they don't know, or they might not yet have the that kind of moment, that clarity of thought that
No.
they should talk to somebody about it as well. And
Mm.
that for me, that's the thing, because you can find yourself in a position where you're incredibly low, but you might not have had that moment where you suddenly think to yourself, hang on a minute, I can see now that
Mm.
I'm in a trough here and I
Mm.
don't know if I can get out of this. I need to go and I need to say something to my other half. I need to say something to my family. I need to seek professional help. I need to go and see the GP. There's that time where you just you're numb to it, aren't you?
Well,
You just
it,
can't step
it,
forward.
this is why I've called my company Happy Sapien. Is I've built a wonderful team of 12 people, all different wellbeing experts in different domains of wellbeing. So it's a holistic way of understanding what it means to be a human being in this hyper-connected world. And it's called Happy Sapien because we do not know the basic functions of how to be a human being. We don't know how to talk. We don't know how to listen. We don't even know how to breathe properly. Um, they are the most basic functions of a human being. But most of us don't know how to listen. You know, when I was in my lowest, had almost just ended my life. And, I did a post on it LinkedIn recently going, this is why I'm part of Talk Club. A mate said, "How you doing?" And instead of doing the default answer, "Not bad, how you doing?" I said, "Oh, not great. I'm pretty struggling quite a lot." And his eyes widened, flicked to the side, and I could see he was uncomfortable, didn't know what to say. And so we just slipped into generic pants. And it's like, you ask me how I'm doing, I tell you how I'm doing. You do not know how to listen or to respond to that, right? It's not his fault, because how many of us, how many men or women, I think women would be a lot better, but how many men know how to truly listen, to hold a space for another man who might be struggling? Awkward as fuck. So, and I didn't really know how to articulate how I was feeling. I only knew how to say, yeah, I'm a bit struggling a bit. I didn't know how to say to him, oh, mate, I just almost just killed myself, last week. I didn't know how to say that, communicate that. And then through my, learning about my mental health, my well-being, and working incredibly hard on that, quite a lot of my techniques is breath work, cold water immersion, and journaling, immersing myself in nature, and all, feeling like I belong to a group. But all of those are just basic human things that we do not know how to do.
I think that feels like the logical point to kind of drill down into that. So um, those light bulb moments for you on your kind of recovery journey.
Mm.
You've mentioned a couple of specific things or practices that you've developed, but what what are some of the kind of the kind of the catalyst or those moments where you've suddenly gone, oh, okay, I need to keep doing that. I need to stop doing that. What can you kind of think about what those breakthrough moments were for you?
Yeah, so I was drawn to, I mean, when I mean 0 out of 10. I was like rock, I mean, rock bottom. Like it couldn't get any lower. I hated life. I couldn't get out of bed unless I had a line of Coke. And go to the kitchen and have a double shot of whiskey just to get up and try and face the world. Um, I didn't really want to hang around people or speak to people and try and pretend to be happy. So I'd just take myself in nature, and I found that that helped me. Um, and then I started listening to podcasts about well-being and some really inspirational people. And so I was, those were my two first things that I started naturally found myself doing to improve my well-being.
Can I ask,
Yeah.
and this to someone that hasn't been through deep depression, this might sound weird, but what you've just described of, you know, needing a line of Coke, double shot of whiskey to kind of set yourself up for the day or to get yourself out of bed, there's quite an epic amount of effort that involves going from that to actually going out of the house and being in natural surrounds. You know, that can feel like a completely insurmountable achievement, just getting out of the front door.
Yeah.
Sometimes. How did you do that? What was it that forced your hand into getting out of the house? What was the difference maker there?
To get away from the bag of Coke, because I just sit there all day and snort it and drink whiskey and numb myself. You do that for long enough, you think, oh, I need to do something a bit different. Yeah.
It's forcing you to escape. It's interesting, isn't it? Because you're forcing yourself to avoid something, whereas the flip side of that is somebody really has to force themselves to go and do something. And I wonder if that's like a natural kind of inclination as to whether or not someone's a glass half full or a glass half empty kind of mindset. So for me, it was, I had to really think about going to do something. It was an absence of doing anything that manifested itself for me. I was just bed bound for weeks, just the idea of walking across the landing to go to the bathroom to brush my teeth. That felt like,
or even having a shower.
Yeah. So it's another day. I can probably get away without having a shower. I don't need to do that. I'm not going anywhere, type thing. But it's kind of that's the reason I asked the question, because it's always interesting to kind of understand what drives that behavior, what drives that thought, as you're starting to kind of realize that this is a situation that you need to move beyond and start to take control with those baby steps.
Yeah, I needed to work on my mindset. I was going through. I mean, I owe my life to the NHS. You know, they. I was going through therapy, learning about acceptance. You know, that's the one thing we sort of the first thing that we start learning about acceptance, that life is that life will be cruel, bad shit will happen. You're allowed to feel bad. You're not allowed to kill yourself. You know, so concentrate on your feelings and talking about them and trying to process them. And my therapist did actually say you should start journaling your thoughts down, because once you get the, you know, if you can't articulate the words to other people or haven't got the confidence or feel the shame is stopping you, then actually writing a journal, and that started helping. And yeah, it was going from she was working to try and shift me from a fixed mindset of unbroken to a growth mindset of there are lots of things you can do to help yourself. And yeah, I just end up just going, right, I need to work on myself. I need to go on a journey of better understanding myself, my nervous system, what life is, what it means to be a human being. And I end up doing lots of exercise, loads of cycling, going up Devil's Dyke every day, to burn some energy out and force myself out of the house to get some fresh air, to get the blood pumping. And I found myself doing not much cycling in the winter, and it was freezing cold. And something just said, again, it's just the universe saying, "Go and jump in the sea." And I hate the cold, but I found myself. I don't know what it is. My soul, my subconscious, the universe, guardian angel, or something made me go, I'm just going to do something crazy. Do you know what it is? And I realized what this was. I went in the sea, and when I was took my clothes off, it got into my shorts, and it was freezing. And I went, "Am I really going to go in there?" And I went, "You're here. You got to do it now." And I went in, and when you get into something, a cold shower, and you go like that. It was. I started doing that, and it just shook me out of my brain and into this like it is fucking cold, and I forgot all my problems for that moment. Um, and I was in the water, and my body was saying, "Get out of here! This is awful," and my brain's saying, you want to be in here for a while." And when I came out, my adrenaline and endorphins and the high and what I've accomplished was just so overwhelming. It was just like I was buzzing for like 3 hours, just going, "Oh, that was incredible." So there's a biological thing that happened, but the psychological, I was like, I ended up doing it every day. People thought I was crazy, and I was. I wasn't crazy. I was doing it to stop being crazy. And someone said, why did you keep on doing it?" And I said, when your life feels completely out of control and there's nothing you can do about it, I can go in that sea and my body say, "Get out." And that's the one thing I can control. If it's going, "You should get out." No, you're not. I'm going to stay in there and I'm going to make myself, and I'm in control. For that 4 minutes of my day, I felt completely in control.
Mm.
And I went, right. And after 2 minutes of being in this freezing water, something amazing happens. You go, "And this is awful, awful." And after 2 minutes, your body acclimatizes to it, the environment, and you relax, and it doesn't feel cold anymore. And there's something really profound about that.
Mm.
And that's how you build mental resilience to doing things that are difficult, to have a growth mindset, forcing yourself to go, "I'm in control of this moment." And for me, and it just went from there. I was like, "This is great." Um, yeah, it was a really powerful thing to do.
You
Hard.
mentioned you mentioned the 4 minutes thing. Are you literally like with a watch going, right? Okay. When you're having the dialogue going, "It's cold. You got to get out." No, I'm going to see it through. I'm going to see it through. Are you looking at the time going, "I've still got another minute that I need to do with this," or are you kind of just trying to roughly calculate how long you've been in there?
Yeah, I've got a watch. It's really important to have that monitor, and different months to the year, you got to. There's limits of how far you should go.
Mm.
Um, February and March, January, February, March, they're the coldest because it's had all winter to get cold, and it is so brutal. It is unbelievably cold, and you shouldn't stay in there for more than 3-4 minutes at that sort of time because you start losing the feelings in your hands and feet. So getting out, especially on the rocks down here, is really hard. And if you're doing it on your own, you shouldn't do it on your own because if you get in trouble, there's no one to pull you out. So I built a swim club. So there's a whole bunch of us that do it.
Everyone just rocks up in their dressing gowns.
Yeah, in the dry robes. But everyone's going through stuff. The only people who do it are people going through stuff. No sane person would do it, you know. And so you got my bunch of mates, the guys, and then we're all going through like life stuff, and then you'll have a load of 50-year-old women going through the menopause, and they do it to cool their body down because it gets really hot. And
Yeah.
so we always say hello to each other.
Wow. What a habit to have developed, and a kind of a really kind of visceral, physical representation of what good habits can look like. And not everyone. When you see those people, on the people that I imagine you're one of these, on Christmas Day or New Year's Day, will be down there dipping themselves in the water, go yay, and I
Every year.
kind of go, what the hell are they doing? It's the rationale, the reasoning for how you've got to that point is like abundantly clear. It's like this is a thing that I now look forward to.
Yeah,
I
yeah.
hated it. Now I look forward to it.
When I first moved to Brighton, 8, 9 years ago, or 10 years ago, I remember going along the beach for a stroll and seeing people going in, going, "You are fucking crazy." And then I realised that, and then when I was doing it, I had people walking past, shaking their head, going, and I went, "I know they're thinking I'm crazy, and this is to stop me being crazy." Yeah, it was a really weird sort of out of body experience, that one.
Awesome. Awesome.
Yeah.
Well, the we're at question 5, David. I mean,
Right.
this has been an amazing conversation.
Mm.
The last question that I ask is if somebody, and by this I don't mean like every single thing has been similar to what you've been through, but if somebody has found themselves in a similar position
Mm.
to the circumstances that you've talked through today, what in your experience is the most important thing that that person can do?
Talk, talk, and talk. That's it. Talk. Tell people how you're feeling, and understand. Have a look inside yourself. See what it is you're struggling with, and go and tell someone. If a friend doesn't know how to listen, go to someone else. If they don't know how to listen, go to Talk Club. Join Men in the Motions. There are so many clubs and things out there to hold space, to allow you to validate your feelings, to understand your feelings, to bring them, to talk about them. And this is why I started Talk Club Brighton and Hove 2 weeks ago, to hold a space for guys who, I got a guy, and the very first one, he said, I'm telling my wife I'm struggling. She doesn't know how to respond. And so we just spoke about it for an hour. And at the end of it, he felt great.
Yeah.
He felt he'd been seen. He felt like he'd been listened to. We validated his feelings. And it's fine. If you're really struggling, we have a trained therapists. And so my job is to facilitate. And we say the whole premise is, how are you out of 10? So at the check-in, we say, how are you out of 10? And normally the scores aren't that great because you wouldn't be there otherwise. We talk about uh, how are you out of 10 and why? What brings you joy in your last week? And this week, how are you going to work on your mental fitness? And then we ask each other, check out how you're out of 10. And there's always like a 15% uplift. But if someone's rock bottom, then my role as a facilitator is to then flag it with our in-house therapists to really make sure that person doesn't reach a moment of crisis. But there's support out there if you need it. But the most important thing is to talk.
Couldn't agree more. Couldn't agree more. And I'll make sure that we um, tag Talk Club as well when the episode goes out, and we'll put a link to Talk Club in the description of this as well. Something else that I'd like to ask you is if people have heard this conversation and they would like to talk to you directly, speak to you about it, is it okay for them to get in contact? Awesome. Okay. So I'll make sure that David's obviously tagged in the posts we put out, and a link to David's LinkedIn profile will be in the description as well. So anybody who wants to connect with, follow David, keep up to speed with the work that he's doing at Happy Sapiens, and as an advocate of mental health, positive mental health, mental fitness, you'll be able to find him there. In conclusion, then, David, I just want to say thank you so much for being willing to come onto the show and to talk so openly about what was clearly an incredibly difficult time for you, but to share as well the kind of, I guess, the benefit of having been through that experience that you've gained now, and how it's helped you to get to where you are today. I think it's an incredibly powerful story. I know that you've told it to lots of other people. I hope in doing this it gets in front of new people
Yeah.
that need to hear this stuff, to realize that there are things that they can do to positively influence their own situation, even if it is taking that decision to just go up, get out of bed, walk downstairs, go and stand in the garden, feel the sunshine on their face, even if that's the first step before they then go and start talking to people.
Yes.
I think it can be incredibly valuable. So to anybody listening, thank you also for joining David and I for this episode of Good Enough Chats. If you found the show helpful, please like the episode where you see it, share it with people that need to see it. Subscribe to the feeds, whether it's on the podcast platforms or on YouTube. If you are listening to this on the podcast platforms, we would love reviews. Reviews really help this to get momentum, get it in front of more ears, eyes, whichever body part people are consuming the content through. But any support that you can give us to help get this in front of more people that need to see it, massively appreciated. We are going to be back again very shortly with another episode of Good Enough Chats. In the meantime, take care of yourselves, and we'll see you soon. Thank you.